Good morning. So, it is my last day at Ticketmaster today, and tomorrow I start my new job as a full stack developer at my services. So that's gonna be fun. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to touch on when do you migrate code? When do you know that there's a value in migrating code from one set of something to another set of something? And to start us off with, the obvious and easiest choice is if if there's a very small migration to be made. Usually migrating code takes a lot of time. That's something that I have a lot of first-hand experience of. So if you have, like in my scenario, it basically meant moving a really old code base from using an all jQuery implementation over to using React. And the thing is that what I've learned so far when it comes to migrating and knowing when you need to migrate is two main things. The first and foremost thing to learn is that it is very costly for the most part when we're talking about a non-trivial migration, which means that when you decide to make a migration of your code base, you need to be sure that there is a strong value for doing so, especially if you're doing it in a a non-type language like JavaScript. Because the thing is that when you migrate, if you migrate a code base, it is so easy to forget something or create a regression, something like that. Which means that, because remember, what you're in essence doing is, for the most part, that you are moving something from one thing that works the exact same way as the thing that you're moving towards. It's just that you're using different tools to do it and progress from there. So personally, I only see really two good reasons to do a migration. The first and foremost reason to do a migration is that there is a technical limitation to what you're doing. Let's say for some reason that you are using Java and that you need to improve, you have issues with the JVM or uptimes, or you have issues with, I don't know, threading, or what, for some reason you have a technical reason to move to something like, I don't know, Go or Elixir or Scala or whatever, something like that. So that in order to improve, basically you have squeezed all of the ability and power that you can from one set of technology over to the other. From one set of technology, and now you need something that this technology can no longer provide, and then you move over to the next thing. A strong reason for this would be if you made a prototype for, let's say, machine learning in JavaScript. And when you started, for the most part, you only did the interfaces and all that stuff, and now you need to make the actual thing. And as we all know, that JavaScript and rounding and mathematics is really poor, so you migrate over your application to Rust or Go or something like that, because you need the high precision calculations, right? That's a strong use case, and it's worth it, because you will, in the machine learning example, it will not work. It's long term, it will cost the project much more than simply doing what I'm suggesting, to stay on the same code base. That's number one. Number two is, if you are in a situation where you have outdated tools, where basically the legacy is so bad that it becomes difficult for you to maintain it, it becomes difficult for you to find new people to help out or build on the project. This is not the common case for newer developers or newer projects, but at Ticketmaster, for example, it's definitely the case where basically you don't like the neglect to the code base is so severe that you don't really have anybody who can take ownership of the code. So, and a classic example for those of you who have been doing JavaScript for a while, where you have a lot of problems with global namespace pollution, references to different elements on the DOM with no real connection between them, so that you, in essence, you lose trust in that the code base is working in the way it should be working. And that's another really strong use case. The example I can give you is what happened to me at Ticketmaster, where in essence we had large, massive, super JavaScript files that did all kinds of stuff. I mean, we had JavaScript, they still have a few of those files around where there's literally over between 2,000 to 5,000 lines of code in a single file. Everything is doing everything on the same page. There are no modules, nothing like that whatsoever, and they have a synchronous dispatching system that communicates between the different modules. You have absolutely no idea who is receiving a message or providing a message from anywhere in the code. You simply don't know. And that means that rather we made the decision that if we want, like they were losing people over this. They didn't want, like the front-end developers that they hired couldn't maintain this over time because there was nobody who actually had, they couldn't get into how things were working and maintain it and move it towards something nicer. And there was really nobody who wanted to make it a nicer experience until me and my colleagues started working there. So basically what we decided was to migrate, instead of trying to fix such severe legacy and considering it was outdated technology like Java, jQuery and so it'll fit for what we needed. We decided that a migration was appropriate. It was a large investment, and I'm not going to kid around. It took, and it's still not completely finished. We've been working on it for 2 years. So yeah, it's not full time, but we could have done it in full time in a fairly short amount of time. But it is a large investment because we're talking about risking a lot of regression and bugs for the benefit of having a more modern tech stack. So those are the things that you need to consider whenever you look at migrating something. And my number one tip for when you don't migrate something is the same tip I can give you for when do you refactor code. Don't refactor and don't migrate if the only reason for doing so is that it is a reason where you have convinced yourself that this is the way to go. For example, I love Elixir. I think it's one of the best server-side technologies there is, but you don't see me rewriting my startup code like that's in JavaScript and serverless and so forth into Elixir just because I think it's a great technology. It's difficult to do. It comes with for some people it is, but some people don't care, and it's not a problem for them. But some people like myself, I used to do that. I had an application, rewrote it in microservices, realized that this is not right, and then rewrote it again. And that's something you have to teach yourself. You have to understand when to do and that comes from experience. And what little experience I have, I now offer to you. So don't make my mistakes. Make sure that you migrate code for the right reasons, because at the end of the day, it's not about using the perfect technology to doing something. It is about providing an application that works, that is maintainable, and that basically you can basically it's about making sure that the application works and that it is maintainable over time. And it's not so much about your personal preferences in terms of technology and so forth. So only migrate, as I said, if there's a technical limitation and you need something that another language is providing, or if your legacy is so horrible that it will actually be better for you to migrate than trying to fix the problems that you have in the current code base.